across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock, and I know that you've been listening or watching Kev for the last few hours. So we're picking up the mantle here on the death of the 31-year-old influencer Charlie Kirk after being shot at a campus event in Utah. President Trump has said the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he's no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go to his beautiful wife Erica and family. Charlie, we love you. Now, whether you agree or disagree with Charlie Kirk, and he was a divisive figure, most certainly he was a divisive figure, he was a human being with a family and exercising his right to free speech. And the whole point of free speech is even if you don't agree with somebody, you just have to let them say it. So this is quite a shock. It's been a shock across America. And look, maybe a lot of you wouldn't have heard of Charlie Kirk. He was, like I said, he was a divisive figure in America. He was best known really on social media, going around university campuses, taking on debates from all comers. I watched many of Charlie Kirk's debates and barely agreed with much of them, but it's his right to have those things, and it's his right to say those things, and it is the right of those people in the audience to watch him say those things without the fear of seeing somebody shot dead, or without themselves, of course, being collateral damage. There was a suspect, but apparently he has been released. So at the moment, it doesn't appear that there is a suspect in custody, but we will get the latest now from John Mysack, who's politics managing editor at masslive.com in Boston. Good evening to you, John.
Good evening,
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Like I said, many of our audience may not know who Charlie Kirk was.
Yeah, he's, as you said, Petrie, he's a well-known conservative influencer, well-known online, commanded a huge following. It really had a power base to rival the Republican National Committee in a lot of ways. And as President Trump noted in his social media post, connected with young conservatives in a very real way. He's not too terribly much older, or was not too much terribly older than they are at 31 years old. So older, like what, 9 years older than the oldest student at that Utah University event, which isn't that far removed. Again, controversial opinions, a polarizing figure. And as you noted, I mean, agree or disagree, you have to respect him for getting down there in the trenches and being willing to debate and to take all comers, which is apparently what he was doing when this tragedy unfolded a few hours ago.
He was, I believe, about 20 minutes into his performance, if you like. Talk me through what happened, John.
Been following along with this here as much as kind of trying to keep track of things. A report from the Deseret News, that's the local newspaper in Utah, on MSNBC, the American news channel, a few minutes ago, who was there on the ground covering the event. A huge crowd, very enthusiastic. He had just engaged with a student, taken the microphone in his hand when the shot rang out from about 200 yards away. This young journalist described a lot of blood coming from Mr. Kirk's neck. There's video of it online. I don't recommend going to find it. It's not for the faint of heart. And he was apparently rushed from the scene, taken to hospital. We learned from President Trump probably 20 minutes ago that Mr. Kirk had passed. And here we find ourselves. Petrie, I'm thinking about this. Is one, you and I have talked about this so many times. in the past. Gun violence in the United States, political violence in the United States, comes just a few short months after a Minnesota state lawmaker was shot dead in her home with her husband and her dog. An attempt on the life of President Trump in July of 2024, other acts of political violence across the United States. This is now the second fatality of an American public elected, well, not elected official, but a public figure who's politically involved. And we've crossed a very tragic line as a country today.
So, I mean, although we don't have a motive at the moment, this is being described as a political assassination, that this is somebody who was, it is believed, likely killed for his conservative views, his very conservative views. But there was a suspect, and now there isn't a suspect. What happened there?
I don't really have a lot of info to share there, Petrie, but the university says they don't have somebody in custody, that they're still searching for a suspect at this time.
And what will this mean to Americans who probably have seen the footage, or at least will be looking for it? But what will it mean to them that Charlie Kirk has been killed?
Well, if you are someone who agrees with Mr. Kirk, I think this probably will reaffirm, and again, we don't know why he is killed. We don't know who the shooter is. We don't know what their motives are. It's not unreasonable inference to assume that it was political, but we don't know that yet. But if you are somebody on the conservative side, on the MAGA side, this will probably deepen your dislike for people on the other side of the fence. It will further sort of entrench views of persecution. If you are somebody on the American left, I really hope you're not celebrating this. He's 31, he's got a family. That's a kid who's not going to have a dad. That's a wife who's not going to have a husband, brother, sister. I don't know about his family, but there's a hole's been torn in a family today. This is supposed to be a civil exchange of a civil debate, a civil exchange of ideas. We're losing the ability to talk to each other. We're losing the ability to debate each other. And this incident today takes it to an extreme.
It must, right now, in the MAGA movement, or even in the Republican Party, I would imagine this will make them think twice about their own security, because you wouldn't have imagined that Charlie Kirk, as divisive as he was, would really be on the top of that list.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Republicans holding town halls across the country, and those have gotten quite raucous since the passage of the president's domestic policy bill, with the stepped up immigration enforcement, with the National Guard presence in Los Angeles and in Washington, D.C. We've seen Republican elected officials cut these events short because they've grown out of control. We know that lawmakers now bring more security with them. We know that they're thinking twice about what kind of events they're having. If the intent is to chill, it certainly could have that effect.
I mean, we're not so used to gun violence here in this country, and I'm trying to imagine 200 yards away to get some idea of how lucky, in inverted commas, the shooter was, or how accurate and talented they were. That'll be the sort of thing the police are looking at, presumably.
Right, that's what, 2 Premier League pitches away, I think,
wow.
If I'm doing the math correctly, because they're about 100 yards each, I think. So yeah, you're both.
That's
the combination
a long way.
Luck and very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So the police, what will they be doing now? Again, with one suspect, I did see images of a man on his knees being cuffed and arrested. He was tagged as a suspect. It turned out that he's been now released. But what is the process now for the police in Utah, in this area?
I'll fall back on my old police reporting days here. They are probably talking to anybody and everybody, Petrie, who was in that crowd. They're, I'm sure, searching the surrounding buildings for any evidence or sign. They'll be reaching out into the community to see who knows anything. I mean, keep in mind the shooting of the United Healthcare executive on the streets of New York City. The only reason that Luigi Mangione was caught was because a citizen in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, had the presence of mind to recognize him and call the police. So the message is going to get out there. They're going to make people aware of, once they know who this person is, and they will probably know that in the due course of time, circulate that image and appeal to the public to keep their eyes open. But right now, it's the kind of real ground level police work that happens after any crime, talking to people, interviewing witnesses, gathering evidence, the real micro stuff.
We've got a situation, though, where this shooter is still at large. What effect will that have on the campus and in the surrounding town?
Well, we know that they have canceled classes on this university campus. I do not know if they've issued a shelter-in-place order for the surrounding community, although that does not seem unreasonable. It's typically what happens after these events, because if this person is at large, is armed, is probably dangerous, you want to minimize the exposure of as many people as you possibly can. But again, I have no first-hand knowledge that's the case. That's just pure inference on my part.
No, that's what they would normally do. With Donald Trump, he was closely associated with him. We've also seen J.D. Vance chatting with him in television interviews and things like that. Is this a big knock for them in terms of this grassroots movement, this approaching of conservative youth and having his particular evangelical view?
Well, I mean, we know that conservative young people, MAGA-influenced young men, were a big part of the president's appeal in his reelection in 2024. Charlie Kirk was among the people who spoke directly to that constituency. His was a major voice. That on any level is a tremendous loss. What that's going to mean politically, I wouldn't even try to speculate at the moment. There's just too much of a human level tragedy at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, he's a father of two, as you said, a husband as well. As I was saying, it doesn't really matter at this stage, does it, if you disagreed with him? But to your point earlier about the inability for us to be able to have a civilized debate from either side of any opinion, and this fear over freedom of speech, to which Donald Trump talks a lot.
No, you're absolutely correct. I see it all the time in my email. We see it in our comment section on social media. It's very much ready, fire, aim. People lash out. They say stuff from the remove of their keyboards without thinking sort of about that next step down and how it might be received. And that, unfortunately, is where we are right now as a nation. And it's a bipartisan disease. People are bunkered in their own neighborhoods. They're bunkered in their own social circles. If you are a person of progressive persuasion, you probably only speak to people who agree with you. Mm-hmm. If you're a person of conservative persuasion, you probably only speak to people with whom you agree. There's really not as much of that crossing over as there used to be. And when that happens, Petrie, stereotyping sets in. Mm. Cliches step in, dehumanization steps in. You stop seeing the person with whom you disagree as a human and just sort of as an archetype of whatever it is you think is the worst thing in the world. And that way, stuff like this sadly probably happens.
The other thought that occurred to me is that this could go down the line of being a religious attack as opposed to a political attack. And Donald Trump is very much at the moment shifting around things, not quite in the Constitution, but certainly is saying that Christianity needs to be at the forefront, Christianity needs to be number one. So if this does turn out to be a religious attack as opposed to a political attack, will that have a different outcome?
And God help us if that's the case. We're supposed to be a pluralistic nation. We're supposed to be welcoming to people of all beliefs. If Mr. Kirk was in fact targeted for what he believed religiously, we can't sit there and criticize theocrats. We can't sit there and criticize religious terrorists if this is, the same thing that is on offer.
I mean, it just seems, I mean, again, like, because my views may differ sometimes quite wildly from those of my colleagues, and you're right. I mean, all it means, people just shout and hate me for it, rather than think, well, there's a different point of view, maybe I'll listen to it. People don't want to listen even to a different point of view, let alone acknowledge that there is another point of view.
Yeah,
and that's global. That is global, I think.
I think I think you're right. You can probably speak to it better in your country, but again, sort of the rise of social media, the rise of partisan-minded press, it becomes harder and harder to to find that common ground. There's less of a monoculture than there was 25 years ago. I'm old enough to remember when there were four TV stations on the dial in the United States. And now there are so many people bunkered down with their own interests and their own constituencies. It's possible to go the whole day without talking to somebody who doesn't feel the same way as you.
Gun violence in the US, unfortunately, John, you and I have had cause over the last few years to talk fairly often about the level of gun violence in the United States. And yet this is a Republican Party who are absolutely determined not to mess with the Second Amendment. It has always been believed that there would always be a moment that questions will actually seriously be asked. Could this be the moment?
It'll be the last time until the next time, Petrie. I think as you and I have said so many times, we've sat here and said, okay, well, this is it. This is the linchpin moment where we're all going to figure it out and we're all going to come together. And then you and I are back here talking a couple of months later about whatever horrific act there was. And I wish that there were a path forward on that, but I'm not at all confident that's the case.
John, thank you very much indeed for joining me. And that news again, if you've just joined, that the conservative activist Charlie Kirk has died after being shot at a campus event in Utah. He was an influential ally of the president, known for holding open-air debates on campuses across the country. The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead, writes Trump. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. A suspect was taken into custody but later released, and according to the local mayor, the suspect is still at large and has not been found yet. One person had earlier been arrested, as I said, but is understood they are not the suspect. And Donald Trump has also announced on Truth Social, in honour of Charlie Kirk, a truly great American patriot, I'm ordering all American flags throughout the United States lowered to half-mast until Sunday evening at 6 p.m. So all American flags will be lowered throughout the United States to half-mast until Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Some messages from you now on this. Jamie said, my thoughts are with Charlie's family at this time. I hope that this is a lesson to people who criticise and call for violence to people with different views. And stop saying stupid things that can lead to things like this happening. Yeah, I mean, we're all entitled to our views, but people who don't agree often take it into their own hands to tell you that they don't agree, or in this case, unfortunately, to show you if that is what it is. We don't know for sure yet. This is from Grant. Evening, Petrie. For the love of God, stop calling Charlie far right or divisive. I have watched. He is, and he was divisive. He was saying that I've watched many debates of his saying how women were happier before that they got jobs and all of these things. That is a divisive point of view. I'm not saying that gives him or anyone the right to hurt anybody, and that's the point I'm making, that even if you don't agree with somebody, this is not the way that you do it. You've never watched anything relating to him. Yes, I have. Stop being a lazy journalist and towing the part. I have watched hours and hours of Charlie Kirk debates. Thank you very much indeed, Grant. And by the way, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm entitled to my point of view. right? I'm entitled, if I found him divisive, and others, millions of others did too, to say that without somebody calling me a lazy journalist. You, my friend, are part of the problem. Erroir has said the murder of Charlie Kirk is a direct attack on free speech. I agree. This needs to be a huge wake-up call to the whole world. Charlie Kirk, such a well-opinionated man. He left school and never went to college and educated himself towards politics. He was a bastion of free speech in the US. He had a wife and 2 kids. I thought he was awesome. This is an attack on our way of life, and that's from Simon in Worcestershire. And Simon, as me, we are all entitled to our views. And that is the whole point of this conversation, that we are all entitled to have our views of people, of politics, of religion, without being called names and without being attacked for it. And that, the irony of even having to say that right now, this is devastating. I may not have agreed with much of what he said, but I would never, ever sanction anyone to do this to another human being. Time for a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. If you've just joined me, right-wing American influencer Charlie Kirk has been shot dead as he spoke during an event at Utah Valley University. Originally, a suspect was arrested, but then later released. And local police, the local mayor as well, has said the suspect is still at large and has not been found yet. So they are still searching for a suspect in this case. A single shot was heard, and Mr. Kirk was seen reaching up with his right hand as blood came out of the left side of his neck, and then he falls off his chair. He was rushed to a hospital. I believe they were trying to perform some kind of surgery. He was given bloods, but then he did die. The president announced that by saying that the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead, and no one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was 31 years old, a father, of 2 young children and, of course, a husband as well. And nobody deserves to die for their beliefs in this way. This is an absolute shocker, and it is an attack on free speech. Agree with him or disagree with him, everybody, I believe, has the right to their views and to their opinions. And some opinions that I listen to, I wholeheartedly disagree with, but you know, on this programme I will always let you say what you want to say. I will never shut you down. This is from Stephen, though. It says, Petrie, Charlie wasn't divisive. He just had opinions you didn't agree with. That's what divisive means. Divisive means to divide opinion. So that sentence, therefore, yes, there were many opinions of his that I didn't agree with. Some I did, but many I didn't. And that's what divisive means. So you've corrected yourself there, I think. I don't know. Sean from Cowden said, this world where freedom of speech is no longer free, never have the words "Je suis Charlie" been more poignant. Oh, good book. That's very clever, actually. R.I.P. Beautiful young man, Sean from Cowden. Right, I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Talk and it's Petrie, and we are still discussing the reactions, actually, to the killing, the murder of Charlie Kirk, the right-wing influencer in the United States. Barack Obama has said, we don't know yet what motivated the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, but this kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy. Michelle and I will be praying for Charlie's family tonight, especially his wife Erica and their 2 young children. And Joe Biden has also reacted to the murder, and said, "There is no place in our country for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones." And finally, for now, Boris Johnson, "The murder of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy and a sign of the utter desperation and cowardice of those who could not defeat him in an argument. Charlie Kirk has been killed not for espousing extremist views, because he didn't. He'd been killed for saying things that used to be simple common sense. He's been killed because he had the courage to stand up publicly for reasonable opinions held by millions and millions of ordinary people, both in the US and in Britain. The world has a shining new martyr to free speech. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and his loved ones." We will bring you more on this and the reactions the world is reacting to this, because I think even if you didn't know who Charlie Kirk was, this is an attack on free speech. This was either a political attack or it was a religious attack, and either way they are utterly unacceptable for any reason. Listen, disagreeing is absolutely part of human nature. Killing each other over it is despicable and disgusting, and hating each other for different points of view as well. I don't understand that either. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. Why does there have to be hate and anger around that situation? I don't remember it being this bad when I was growing up. I really don't. We will get back to this story a little bit later on. But I want to bring your attention to another story that was an exclusive in The Sun today. It's an absolutely extraordinary story about youth and grooming youth violence. As part of a Sun exclusive, Josh Saunders has been looking into a disturbing new wave of extremism emerging in Britain and involving teenagers who are groomed online. As part of his investigation, Josh has spoken to Emily Carter, a mum of Rhiannon Rudd, who was just 14 years old when she began showing signs of radicalisation by far-right extremists. Worried about this turn of events, Emily got in touch with the radicalisation programme Prevent after she admitted downloading a manual to make a bomb and carving a swastika into her forehead. Well, Josh interviewed Emily, and here's a bit of what she had to say.
You know, and the main thing is the day she came down and told me that she had downloaded a PDF on how to build a bomb. She would say little things and we would just ignore it, because I thought, oh, here we go again, another fixation. She did mention to my friend that she didn't like Jews, but she spoke to her about that because she was actually engaged to a Jew for a long time before he passed. I got a phone call to go home, and when I went home, there were 19 police officers surrounding the house. They arrested Rhiannon. Now, take into consideration, my daughter was 14, 5'1", and weighed 7.5 stone, and they had 19 police officers there.
The full interview, by the way, or a longer interview, can be seen on the sun.co.uk. And Josh Saunders, the features writer at the Sun newspaper, joins me now. Josh, thank you for joining me. It's so heartbreaking to see that mum there, Emily, just saying that she saw this darkness fall on her daughter and couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's utterly harrowing, really. You know, and it's just such a sad case. I mean, Rhiannon Rudd, as you saw in the clip, was, 14 years old when she was groomed by a neo-Nazi online. She had autism. She was mentally quite unwell too, which, didn't help the situation. And, what kind of started out as, an innocent interest in German history and World War II that, her mum, fairly encouraged by buying her history books, later developed into more of a fixation, and from there that would lead to her getting in touch with this neo-Nazi in America who groomed and radicalized her in just such harrowing ways, really.
And there are thousands of young people, the fear is, that are being groomed in this way, and not just to the right, but also to hatred of the West as well, hatred. And it's so terrifying for parents, isn't it, with their computer access now?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, when I was speaking to Emily, she said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a mum. I don't think any parent could really be prepared for anything like this. I mean, she said, there's, a lot of advice for all sorts of things nowadays. The internet's quite a scary place, unfortunately. But, there's no guide for what happens when your child is groomed into and radicalized essentially by extremists online.
And it's really interesting, Josh. As you know, I've been talking about the Charlie Kirk murder and how entrenched people become in their personal view, which so quickly turns into hate. And some of these young people, some as young as 9, have been planning extreme violence against groups that they disagree with.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. When I was speaking to Exit Hate UK, which is a charity that helps families going through this and tries to help them as well as the individuals that have been radicalized. They said to me, the youngest person they spoke to was 9 years old. He'd been coerced into believing neo-Nazi type views by his brother. There are also plenty of examples, in recent years of, teenagers who are having their minds warped by this just abhorred ideology, really. And unfortunately, they always have motivations for doing this. Sometimes, they're trying to groom them to, commit acts of terror. There have been cases of, just in recent weeks, there was a 13-year-old girl who was sentenced for stabbing 2 teachers and a pupil at school. There was she was described as being obsessed with Hitler and was clearly very vulnerable. I mean, the reason why I believe that is because when police confronted her, she said, that's one way to be famous, and she wanted eyes on her and seemed thrilled about the fact that it'd be in the news. I don't honestly believe any 13-year-old, after committing such atrocities, who didn't have some kind of vulnerability would be able to do that kind of thing and say those kind of things.
Yeah, it is, like you said, it is that vulnerability, isn't it? And it's interesting to point out. I mean, I don't know whether I made it clear, my fault if I didn't, but that Rhiannon actually took her own life at the age of 16, and the police now accept that perhaps they didn't handle this in the right way, because as we were just saying, Josh, there is a vulnerability to the children who are captured by extremists of all persuasions. Should they be treated as criminals, or should they be treated as Rhiannon was treated? I think she had 19 charges against her at one point for sending heinous text messages, but and violent messages, but perhaps she should have been treated in the mental health as somebody who was unwell, as opposed to somebody who was a criminal or potentially a criminal.
Definitely. I mean, I think in my eyes anyway, there's no doubt about it. She was a victim of grooming. One of the social workers that spoke to her after she had been moved to live in a children's home after the charges were brought, and just say that the 6 charges were later dropped. They described her as the most vulnerable child that they had ever met, which I think speaks volumes, really. And I think it's part of a problem, and it's also there are big similarities to county lines gangs, in the sense that the young children and teenagers who are being groomed are then become trapped Again, and sorry to go on, but when I spoke to the head of Exit Hate UK, one of the things he said is now that these groups are actually luring people onto kind of private chat groups that mean, they're hidden away, they can't be seen publicly, they're only accessible via a QR code, which is given if they've been vetted, which means there's no one there to counter it.
Wow.
There's no idea what they're talking about. And when you're trapped, when you're isolated, it's a very dangerous position to be in. And as the head of Exit Hate UK said, that often leads to them committing crime or harm to even themselves or to other people.
But it seemed like Rhiannon, from your excellent piece, heartbreaking though it was, it seemed like she wanted to reach out. She told her mother that she'd downloaded a PDF to build a bomb. When the police raided, she handed over the USB stick onto which she'd downloaded this bomb material. And just by going through your piece, it does seem like the police responded to her as a criminal, and indeed what she was doing was criminal, but there didn't seem to be any nuance. And even her mother was trying to explain, look, this isn't her. This is something that she would never have done. She was always, very chatty and very bubbly, and suddenly she got into a very dark place. But they didn't listen to her.
That could very well be the case. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, she. So initially, her mum had referred her to prevent the de-radicalisation programme, and as a result, police sent 2 officers initially around to her house where her phone and her computer were confiscated. Now, Rhiannon voluntarily offered them the USB stick, which contained an anti-surveillance internet browser that she'd downloaded. Also, it had the PDF, which of the basically the bomb-making manual. And she also gave them her diary, which Emily, Rhiannon's mum, says was what she believes her daughter asking for help, really. And yeah, I mean, again, as you pointed out, when police swarmed on the house, 9 days later, there were 19 police officers. This was a 14-year-old girl. It's very heavy-handed. The inquest that I believe concluded in June, I believe it was, it found that there was a system failure. That essentially there could have been more that could have been done to help Rhiannon in the way of her mental health, really. She anyone who is unwell enough to scratch a swastika into their forehead is clearly not doing well. And she also had a history of self-harm and autism as well, so it's a very difficult case. And yeah, it certainly seems like she wasn't seen as a victim of grooming, but
well, they very rarely do. That's the thing. And Emily, her mother, wanted to talk about this, to warn other parents. But it strikes me that she approached Prevent as a means of getting Rhiannon help, and what it turned into was the police. So people have got to, I suppose, they've got to trust that Prevent have got the child's best interests at heart, and not necessarily go straight to the criminal activity.
Yeah, it's difficult with Prevent. They're doing the best they can in a difficult situation. Yeah. I think like a lot of services, they're deeply under-resourced. I think those issues definitely play a factor as well. But yeah, I can see your point in the sense of it feels like, especially after the death of Rhiannon, and it's always easier to say in hindsight, but a better, more sensitive approach could have gone on. I mean, even to the point where she was separated from her mother, and she had 3 siblings as well. One of her brothers she was especially close to, and that took a real damning toll on her mental health. The mum described her depressed and sunken eyes, you know, the last time that she saw her, and she knew something was wrong, but, you know, authorities didn't necessarily believe that was the case.
When they took her into the home, into a children's home, because they thought that was the best place for her, Emily said, "You've just killed my daughter." I mean, it doesn't get more stark than that, does it? Josh, thank you so much for this, and again, it really is a superb piece of work, and I would urge people, if you're interested in having a look at this, and the video is on there as well, go to the Sun online at thesun.co.uk. That piece is still up there. My girl 14 carved a swastika into her head after 19 cops swarmed our home. Josh, thank you very much indeed. Josh Saunders there, features writer at The Sun newspaper. Just going to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you. More reactions to the murder of Charlie Kirk, the conservative influencer who was shot dead in Utah. Kamala Harris says, "I'm deeply disturbed by the shooting in Utah. Doug and I send our prayers to Charlie Kirk and his family. Let me be clear, political violence has no place in America. I condemn this act, and we all must work together to ensure this does not lead to more violence." Robert F. Kennedy Jr., once again, a bullet has silenced the most eloquent truth teller of an era. My dear friend Charlie Kirk was our country's relentless and courageous crusader for free speech. We pray for Erica and the children. Charlie is already in paradise with the angels. We ask his prayers for our country. And J.D. Vance, a very short message here: eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord. Kemi Badenoch has said, "There are no words good enough to express the horror of this. The killing of Charlie Kirk is a blow to everything Western civilization stands for: open discourse, robust debate and peaceful dissent. He lived his life by those very principles, no matter the danger it put him in. This may have happened far from our shores, but the rising intolerance of opposing views affects us all. We cannot turn a blind eye to it. My thoughts are with Charlie's family and his wife Erica and their children." And that's the point of this, isn't it? Even if you didn't know who Charlie Kirk was, even if you didn't watch his debates and watch him and know what he stood for and know where he was, that doesn't matter. This was an attack on somebody who was innocently expressing their views at a public event, and it cost him his life. That is never, acceptable. Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Bill Keeler, host of First News with Keeler on WIBX in New York. Bill, this will be, I'm sure, your talking point.
It absolutely will be tomorrow. It's already been since this occurred. It's obviously there's no room anywhere for violence, but we've reached a point where this has just become, in the United States, it's become something that we have somehow accepted. When the alert first came out today, it said there was an active shooter on a college campus. And I have to say, if that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have immediately run to the computer and begun my work. But it was halfway across the country, and it's just become the norm. What we didn't expect was to hear that it was Charlie Kirk. And if you've seen the video, it is just horrific. I don't know how he could have survived that gunshot.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem that they tried, didn't they? At the hospital, he was taken straight away, but sadly succumbed to that injury. The shooter still being at large as well, Bill. We try to get a measure of that in this country. America, sadly, all too used to this. What will the process be right now?
Well, it's interesting because earlier there was a suspect, and there was video and photos of the person on the ground. The audio that we heard was, "I know my rights. I have the right to remain silent." Immediately, everyone thought they have the shooter. But it seems that the shooter came from quite a distance away. They're saying about 200 yards away. So that was an exact shot. That was a perfect shot. It almost seems like it had to be a high-powered rifle that was used, and it was the perfect shot. So someone knew what they were doing. It's not like the shots that were fired against Donald Trump, where it was a kid in that situation. But now everyone's looking. There was scrambling. Police are looking around the scene in the area where the speech was going on. Somebody slipped away, and I don't know how close at this point they are to finding this person, but there is a manhunt, and so far there's no photo that's been released of the person they're looking for.
I mean, 200 yards is like you said, is a heck of a distance. All of these things, I'm guessing, will play into what kind of person the police will be looking for.
I have to say that at this point, I heard somebody say they are at war with us. They, meaning liberals, are at war with us, meaning conservatives. Boy, that is difficult rhetoric to run with at this point. And we are a divided country, but there are limits. And to decide we're going to go out and begin assassinating people, this is a very difficult, I think, delicate time for this country, and for something like this to happen. At this point, we don't know who they're looking for. Is it a liberal that is obviously you have to be dealing with someone who's mentally deranged, someone with military experience? If it was from 200 yards away, they know how to shoot a rifle and hit their target. So I'm assuming all of that is being worked on right now as they try to profile whoever it is they're looking for.
You and I both, Bill, do phone-in programs, and we both invite opinions from all sides of any debate that we might be throwing out there as a point of conversation. It is a really difficult world that we live in at the moment, that, you know, if you don't agree with somebody, then you're immediately the enemy, it seems. When did that change? When did that change? Because I always remember having really robust debates with people, and it was taken in good faith, and people would just go away and say, well, we'll agree to disagree. Maybe that happened to you, maybe that's your experience, but now it's name-calling, it's anger, threats of violence. I mean, I've come off X now because the odd threat of rape I just found really tedious and not welcoming in my life, because I have a different point of view. When did that change?
It kind of crept up on us, didn't it? I almost feel as if it's been, one could say for us, well, it's when Trump ran for office. I don't believe that's true. I feel that it may have been when Obama ran and became president of the United States. All of a sudden, there was a great deal of liberal agenda that was pushed. We now had a black president. But this is also not a problem that's exclusive to the United States. It's around the world we're seeing this. And you are absolutely right. I've already taken some pretty hefty text messages from people who I know and are listeners of my program who are, I will never listen again, you're the problem, you're the one throwing gas on the fire. And in reality, all I've done is show both sides of the story. I feel that. I have my own personal opinions, and I may talk a little more freely when I speak with you, but let's be honest, we're only a click away. There's no ocean in between a click on the internet. But the reality is, we no longer seem to be okay with telling both sides of a story. We want to hear our side. And if you even hear a hint of trying to be fair, like the comment that I made was both sides need to step down this rhetoric. And the response to that was no, the liberals, they're calling him Hitler. That's what's causing this. In my opinion, both sides need to step down the rhetoric. But that is not going to satisfy this audience right now. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day for me. Because we'll be taking phone calls on this, and it will be heated.
Yeah, I mean, I said that he was a divisive character, and that already people are saying that's only because you didn't agree with him, and I'm like, well, that's what divisive kind of means, but that's that's also the point. The point is that this man was shot for what he was saying. That somebody may have disagreed with him. We don't know the motives yet. And that is so wrong. And then somebody, doesn't understand that that's why this has happened. That's what I don't get, Bill. It's kind of like, well, you're wrong. And it's like, well, really? I don't know.
I felt yesterday I was on your program and I walked away thinking I needed to have better answers. I felt like I was frustrated and felt like I don't understand. And I have to say that again today. And it's not a cop-out.
No, Bill, you are always brilliant, and you've always got the ears of the Americans. Thank you. Bill Keeler there.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and I'm delighted to say that we have Vincent Moss in the studio to go through the papers, and also just your reaction on the Charlie Kirk murders. We've got still some more reaction that I will read out, and it's really a lot of people perhaps listening will not have known who Charlie Kirk was, unless they're, I mean, I'm into watching, you know, TikTok debates and Substack and all of those things. I spread my church very broadly in terms of where I get my information from. So I was aware of Charlie Kirk, and I in fact had to explain to my team who he was when I came in, It was sometimes uncomfortable to watch his debates. It was sometimes difficult. I didn't always agree with him. Sometimes, occasionally, I did agree with him. But I always believed he had the right to say what he believed. Absolutely, 100%. As a journalist, you have to believe. I think it's a central tenet of journalism. A lot of people will see this, even if they didn't know him, as an attack on that freedom.
Very much so. I mean, it's another terrible shooting in America, and not a name well known to many people, as you say, in the UK, Petrie, but huge in America in terms of his influence, particularly among Gen Zers and TikTok users, because he was a leader really of the sort of MAGA influencers and of cheerleading for Trump really, and for youth. And I think it was said that 2/3 of American young people will have seen or at least browsed some of what he'd been saying on TikTok. So massively influential, particularly among the sort of younger people. But really, yes, yet another attack after the attempted assassination attempt on the president last year on free speech. And it wasn't the sort of speech, for those that weren't familiar with it, that was hate speech. It might have been stuff you didn't agree with, and very much in the Trump.
It wasn't hate speech,
but it wasn't the sort of along the lines of kill people or do this, that and the other. It was just a sort of MAGA cheerleading, if you like, with particular strain of politics. Might not be everybody's strain of politics, but very popular in America, and particularly popular with the TikTok generation. So absolutely awful. I'd like to say, will have massive ramifications in America, but we all know what will change in America, which is banning guns. They're not going to do that. They don't do it every time there's a school shooting, and I doubt anything will change this time. And that's the real tragedy of America, is that they see that it's wrong, they all condemn it, but at the end of the day, pretty much anybody can get hold of a gun and do what they like with a gun, as has tragically happened on this occasion. Terrible.
And this will presumably send shivers down the spines of anybody who's a public speaker in America. I mean, look, we're used to some political violence in this country, but the idea that you can't go to a rally, or you can't go to something without the fear that somebody who just disagrees with you, we don't know the motives yet, but you know, it's likely to be some form of distance between what Charlie Kirk was saying and thinking and believed in, and the person who shot him. That must be quite scary in America. Very
scary, and I mean, I think you're potentially going to see a situation where you have with the Pope and the sort of famous Pope-mobile, where speakers will only be able to speak behind bulletproof glass, and that disconnects them from their audience. Many won't want to do that, but as long as people have powerful telescopic rifles and guns like that, it's pretty easy, as we saw with the attempted assassination on Trump, to shoot people from distance, and that's really alarming. But it's worth pointing out, I think Trump recently withdrew the security from Kamala Harris just ahead of her going on a book tour. So if you're going to up protection on political figures, and it certainly looks like America needs that, you need to do that across the board, because many people, these assassination attempts, they're not, sometimes it's politically motivated, but sometimes it's because they want to target a famous figure because they want to be famous. We don't know the motives, as you say, yet in this case, but it's got really chilling potential impact on free speech and just the safety of politicians right across America.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of trying to silence a particular view if indeed that was the motive here. It is going to silence some people. It is going to scare some people. I mean, goodness knows I get enough comments. It's never silenced me, but because I believe in free speech, and free speech goes both ways. I object strongly when they ban speakers coming to this country who are objectionable on every level and hateful on every level. But I believe in free speech, and I believe they should be speaking, and we should, you know, hear what they have to say, and we can disagree if we want to. A lot of people are saying that this is an attack on, specifically on freedom of speech. Do you believe that it will have that effect?
Yes, I think because that culture's started, we've seen it, and I always tend to go back to social media. There's been an attempt, hasn't it, to shut people down on social media, and what we're seeing a little bit of, certainly it looks like in this case, and also we've seen in the UK, is that then seeps out to other elements of society, where people start on social media trying to shut people down and abuse them and threaten them, and of course that bleeds across in a very limited number of cases, albeit, but into wider society, and in the most horrendous of examples ends up with people trying to attack people. And this is probably what's happened in this case. Yeah,
it sort of, in a way, reminds me of the Jill Dando case, many, many years ago now. But the theories around that, they've never found the person who did it to her. But again, that was an attack on her journalism or on her freedom of speech. So this is not a new phenomenon.
Not at all. I mean, I remember that case very well, not least because I worked in Bristol at the time, so I knew her friends Bristol, and family, absolutely. Yeah. She was murdered by an unknown hitman on the doorstep of her Fulham home, and it was widely believed it was because she was the sort of front person, if you like, for Crime Watch. Among the rumours, it could have been a Serbian hit squad or people that she'd highlighted on the show. We never know who did it, but almost certainly it was linked to something to do with her campaigning journalism and shutting her voice because she was highlighting crime.
Yeah, and it's so difficult. It's so awful that we've come to this place as a species where. Well, I was just talking to Bill Keeler before you came in, and he does a phone-in New York, and he said it is getting more difficult to have just a debate with somebody to say, well, I don't agree with that, but I respect your right to say that, you know. And as the host, he gets attacked for telling both sides of the story, because even that isn't acceptable. If you try to tell both sides of the story, somehow you've become partisan, which is the opposite to what it is you're actually doing. I don't know what people are hearing.
I think it's also the way views have become polarised. So if I have a different view from you or anybody else, I might think, well, we've just got different views. I think now people take the view, well, I'm right and Petrie's wrong. And that's been brought about by some of the stridency of the debate, again, online and various forums, is that people no longer seem to be able to accept the fact that somebody has a different view and they could be right. It's just, no, this person's wrong. They're absolutely wrong. I am right because I've listened to this, or I've read this on Facebook, or President Trump says this, or President Obama said that, and I believe them, therefore the other person's wrong. And of course that's not the case. The other person usually just has a different view. Unless you're going to say something ridiculous, potentially like the Earth's flat, then usually the other person has probably just got a different, well-meaning, well-held view. It's not that they're right or wrong, or you're right or wrong.
Yeah, and there used to be some topics, Vincent, that there was pointless ever doing as a phone-in. I've been doing phone-ins for 30 years. And I would steer clear of them because people were so entrenched in those 2 or 3 subjects, and it was just bad radio. It just wasn't interesting, right? Because somebody was either literally so far on one side and literally so far on the other side that it wasn't good listening. So I didn't do those very often. But that list is getting longer and longer and longer, to the point where I've had to say to myself, you just have to do them anyway. Because people are so entrenched.
Yeah, and people won't change their minds. I mean, you can look at anything happening in the news at the moment. I mean, take healthcare issues. There are people who have a very entrenched view, for example, that vaccines are bad for you, including some very prominent politicians. Now, that's clearly, I would have thought, anybody who's read about these things, not the case. But it's very hard to persuade somebody who believes that vaccines are dangerous or linked to cancer or something like that, that they're not. And you can present them with as much scientific evidence as you like, and you won't change their mind. And it's just strange, I think, over the last 10 or 20 years, how people have been reluctant or to the point of stubborn to the point of absolute refusal of being unprepared to change their views when presented with evidence, or worse still, relying on evidence from completely dodgy sources. So when you ask somebody about a medical issue and you ask them how they find out, they say, well, I read it on social media, and they'd rather rely on that than actually maybe talking to a medical professional.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think that these entrenched views that we're seeing now align perfectly with the internet. That people go down a rabbit hole. The internet is not actually that intelligent, right? It will answer the question that you ask it. So depending on what you ask it, it depends on what the answers that you get, right? There's no opinion there. There's no, well, look, you might find this interesting. Like if you read a newspaper, for example, they will often say, well, you know, we've got you know, in our letters page there's something about this, or we've got an opinion piece as well, or we've got, you know, there will be different views. But with the internet, if you believe one thing, then you can only read that down that rabbit hole, and it doesn't offer you at any point, because it hasn't been asked, it's not clever enough, the alternative point of view. And I think that aligns perfectly with people becoming so entrenched in their own views because they've researched it, but research isn't asking a question in that sort of polarised way.
No, that's right, and not least because the algorithm will reinforce your prejudices.
Yeah.
So if you've been searching for a particular topic with a particular slant on that topic, the algorithm will show you more of that stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're wrong, it'll just carry on proving that you're right in being wrong, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So it'll just take you further down the rabbit hole and further in the wrong direction. My one hope potentially is that you now have an AI issue. Now, if AI is to be trusted, and we don't think it is necessarily at the moment, but there's a potential where you could ask AI a question and it might give you a slightly straighter answer, or both points of view, in a way that currently you're not getting when you just search things via the well-known search engines.
And also fake news.
Very much so. Yes, exactly. We've got bad actors, Russia and China, who are deliberately targeting people in this country with fake news in other countries to destabilise our economies. And that's a deliberate plan, and people are swallowing some of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really difficult because you can't blame people either for falling down a rabbit hole. I genuinely think that, you know, as journalists or scientists, or you learn to ask different questions of a situation to test the answers that you're getting. But the general public, they're not taught that at school. They're not taught that sort of critical, look, if that's true, then this could also be true at the same time. Both things can be true at once. But the critical thinking just seems to be being erased, in being replaced with, you know, just go straight down your rabbit hole.
Yeah, unfortunately. I know some schools are trying to reintroduce that, or get children to think more about critical thinking, but unfortunately they're fighting this tide of misinformation from these nefarious characters like Andrew Tate and others, and it's very hard to combat that influence, really, and that's the real struggle, especially among younger people who are the most in some ways they're the most tech savvy, but they're also the most vulnerable, because they're getting channeled down particular routes, and they're not seeing the breadth of opinion, the breadth of stories, and the breadth of views on particular issues.
Well, because they're choosing their own news as well, with the topics that interest them. I mean, maybe, look, if anything, you know, if this is just open debate on debate, then you know, that is one small positive that we can take from this horrible murder. Let's take a quick break, Vincent, and we'll come back with the newspapers in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me, Vincent Moss, former political editor, looking at the Sun newspaper's front page for Thursday. A couple of really big stories there. Mandy's job on the brink, that's up by the flag. Peter Mandelson clinging on to his job. Do you think he's going to have to go?
Yes, in a word, I think it's very grim for him. He's the master of trying to get himself out of trouble, but right now he'll be working out the odds on this. He's fortunate in one respect, there's an awful lot of news around and it's a very busy news day, so he's not even the main story on the papers when he should be, but he's in real trouble over his links with the convicted, now dead child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and I think he's in trouble and he'll probably be losing his job by the end of the week, if not sooner.
Because they were saying as well there's more to come. I mean, Harry Cole from The Sun interviewed, he got the exclusive earlier on Wednesday, which was everywhere, and rightly so, and it looks like there is more to be revealed, and it's all a bit yuck, isn't it? I mean,
it is. I mean, there's already talk, there's emails been revealed that Peter Mandelson, our ambassador in the US, was trying to fix up meetings with Epstein and Tony Blair.
I know.
There are certainly, even just looking at the many emails that Peter Mandelson says exist, talking about yum when he writes emails to Epstein, and they're of a nature that I think the fact the friendship continued after he was indicted for these serious offences, and he appeared to give him advice on how to tackle those, and effectively said to Epstein, don't worry, your friends will stick by you, you might get early release, and you can always rebuild your life. Now, I mean, you know, guilty person tells you he's innocent. Exactly.
I mean, there's no suggestion, of course, that Peter Mandelson's a gay man. He's married to his husband, and he's even said, look, perhaps because I was a gay man, I wasn't party to this, you know, the girls, obviously. But it's about judgment, isn't it? It's about making the right judgment call, and he's apologised, but...
And what he saw, he was in his company so much.
He was,
and he's probably got a duty on himself and the victims to sort of tell the American authorities and potentially Congress what he saw. He was in all these properties that Epstein owned. And
on the island.
Exactly. Now, what did he see on the island? And did he not think it was a bit strange, if this was the case, that there were lots of very young women running around?
He does have questions to answer on that, and I'm with you. I can't see him surviving this, even though that Keir Starmer said today in the Commons that he stands by his man.
You always have to say that at the beginning.
He said that about Angela Rayner as well. The other big story is the royals reunite. So it looks like Harry had tea with his dad.
Yeah, massive story really. Prince Harry over visiting, doing a few engagements in the UK, and looks like he had potentially up to about 50-minute chat at Clarence House with his dad. First time they've met for 19 months, the Sun reports. They had a private tea lasting less than an hour. So good news in a way, potentially. I mean, despite all the briefing he's done against his family and all the rest of it, at the end of the day, his father is now 76, I think. Who knows how long he'll be around, like all elderly people. And I just see this as a father and son relationship. And on that level, I'm happy that they're trying to reunite and build bridges. There, of course, is the backstory to that, about the antipathy towards Meghan, his wife, Harry's wife, and all the stuff that they've spilt the beans on the royal family. So there's still that residual simmering problem there, but it's nice on a family level that they're trying to rebuild the
It is nice. I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, they're father and son, and you would hope that they'd be able to have some sort of peace with their relationship, although there's no sign of William being anywhere near Harry.
No, he was miles away.
None at all. So that's the front page of The Sun. Let's delve into what's going to be in there. We've got Josh Rom in the studio, entertainment journalist and contributor at The Sun. Of course, it's the National Television Awards.
It is, but very quickly on Prince Harry, because it is also a massive story that's being hidden at the moment. Sources actually did previously tell me that King Charles, His Majesty, actually does miss his son on a, as you were saying, a father and son level relationship. But I think it speaks volumes. Of course, when Prince Harry found out that His Majesty had cancer, of course, there was that race to the United Kingdom to kind of get in headlines, to worry about his father. And again, very similar. Small chat, less than an hour. private. I think it still very much signifies that the royal family are still nervous at what Prince Harry might say. They want to meet him in short increments. And then, of course, Prince William, you say he was miles away, but actually it was reported that actually when Harry first flew over, when Prince Harry laid the wreath, recognising the anniversary of the death of his grandmother, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth, that actually at the time, of course, Prince William was with the Princess of Wales at the Sunningdale WI Institute. So actually, they were only about 15 minutes away from each other.
Metaphorical miles, but yes.
Metaphorical miles, but they weren't far away from each other at all. So I think this shows that, yes, okay, there might be an ever so slight thawing of a relationship between His Majesty and Prince Harry. This isn't going away anytime soon.
No, it certainly isn't. There's a trust issue, isn't there? So
100%.
That's the full stories there on page 4 and 5 as well on the Sun newspaper for Thursday. But the NTAs, let's get
Yes, and there's going to be a big spread tomorrow in the Sun from my colleagues. Some very surprising winners at the NTAs. Who would have thought that Ant and Dec losing their Best Presenter award after 23 years to who? None other than Gary Lineker, and who made a speech up on stage going, sometimes it's good to speak up, isn't it? Using his platform in a humongous dig against the BBC and, of course, all these, everybody else here. Of course, I'm actually dumbfounded by it. You can tell I'm speechless. Other shocking news, Loose Women did not win the daytime crown. This morning regained it after the departure of Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. That's a
big moment for them.
Big moment for them. We all thought they've been struggling in the ratings. They've been struggling to kind of, find their feet after the departure of these two presenters. Obviously, there was a cloud of the ghost of the career of Philip Schofield haunting that studio, but they did manage to pick up the award. But better news for all of us, which I'm sure everyone likes. Comedy Award went to Gavin and Stacey. Huge TV moment. It made everyone's Christmas. The biggest show that on Christmas television on the schedules, viewing figures by far. And of course was on the red carpet speaking to the stars. I managed to speak to one of the stars of Gavin and Stacey himself, Rob Brydon, to talk about what the show meant to him and, that just kind of general comments about filming the last episode.
We shot it last September, so it's a while ago now, and then, over just about a year ago, and then it went down so well, it had such an impact, exactly the impact we wanted it to have. I mean, kind of overwhelming, actually. I had people coming up to me afterwards saying it made their Christmas. There's a lady came up to me in a shop and said, an older lady, and she said, I think she said she'd lost her husband, and it was what got her through Christmas because it felt like an extended family.
That's honestly amazing, and especially because,
Include your dad in this? Okay.
Because from your perspective, filming those last scenes, what were those last moments like on set for you?
Really strange, because the last scenes we filmed, as you see in the documentary, were the last scenes in the show. So it was kind of huge, but also a little bit numbing, because it was hard to take in, because we genuinely, and I think that comes across in the documentary, all love each other. Everybody likes everybody, and we've been together for a long time. And it's been a huge thing in all our lives because it's such a hit. So, and that last thing was sitting posing for the photo. And then it was cut, and we knew that was it. So it was kind of hard to process.
Rob Brydon, I love him.
Yeah.
I really do.
What a charmer.
He's absolutely brilliant performer. Just before we get back to the NTAs, I have got some breaking news on the Charlie Kirk murder. This is from the FBI. The suspect for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. So they have a suspect in custody, and we're bringing more on that as soon as we get any more, but that's the only line we've got right now. But it appears the FBI have caught the man they believe is responsible for the killing of Charlie Kirk. We'll get back to that story a little bit later. Josh, let's get back to I was just looking at the list of winners. The quiz show, the 1% Club. I've never watched that. Have you watched that?
I haven't seen that, no.
Is that on in the afternoon?
It's actually usually on a Saturday night. Lee Mack hosts it. It's actually pretty good. In other news, Special Recognition Award went to Wallace and Gromit. Talent show Strictly Come Dancing. Reality competition I'm a Celebrity. But I think it's important to state that the Charlie Kirk story is a massive attack on free speech, and a broadcaster in this country who loves his free speech, who's been a very outspoken voice for farmers, of course, is Jeremy Clarkson, of course, Sun columnist Jeremy Clarkson. He's going to be very happy because Clarkson's Farm won the Factual Entertainment Awards. I'm not actually too sure. I think they might have won last year. I remember. Do you remember?
It's very popular.
Oh, it's so good, Petrie. And I know you were saying just as the Rob Brydon clip was playing, you guys wouldn't have heard, but Petrie was saying she hasn't watched Clarkson's Farm. It's so good and it's so entertaining.
Honestly, I've been told it 100 times. I probably will then.
Me too.
Give it a go.
But the thing is, you learn so much about farming, and this is one of the things. Like, for example, when they were talking, why Jeremy Clarkson is so outspoken against Rachel from Accounts, as we should say, because farmers, they might be inheritance rich, asset rich, but actually they're cash poor, and it takes a lot for them to actually break even on a yearly basis for farms. It's a very hard business.
Yeah, I mean, they are saying that Clarkson has really shone a light on the farm. Clarkson, of all people, has shone a light on farming and farming communities. But you managed to get a chat with
Harriet Cowan, one of the new cast members, brought in to temporarily replace Caleb whilst he was doing his nationwide tour. For Harriet, she's very much used to the farmlands. This was her first NTAs as part of the cast. She loved just soaking up the atmosphere.
And it's like a completely different world. I'm used to cows, so this is different for me.
Because I was going to be like, Clarkson's Farm, how has it been joining the cast?
It's insane. I think, going into a programme that's already so well established was quite daunting, but I think they just, it was so down to earth and real, and I just slotted in and got on with farming. And
hasn't it been so funny with Caleb, that rivalry at first, but then you become such good friends?
Honestly, he's my best friend. I've literally been texting him all like, oh my God, I'm scared, and he's like, you're going to smash it, it's fine. So yeah, he's great.
And have you been back on Diddley Squat filming the next season yet? Or?
You'll have to see when season 5 comes out.
Because I know that Jeremy's been on Twitter complaining about the harvest. That's really hold on, give me a sec. So yeah, Jeremy's been on Twitter complaining about the harvest. That's really it's been really difficult.
It's so dry this year, so we've literally had hardly any crops. So yeah, it's been insane. But honestly, if anyone can get through it, it's farming.
And how has it been dealing with Jeremy and his rants?
To be fair, he kept his rants to a minimum, and he just listened and worked really well and hard. So he was great to work with.
There you go, and all of that information, loads of it, across the Sun newspaper.
It will be
on Thursday.
It will be across the Sun first thing this morning. Pick up your newspaper. We've got spreads, we've got behind the scenes gossip, and on that note, I need to go to the after party to get you more gossip.
I wondered why you were dressed like that.
Well, I mean, as always, just like previous Petrie, I've literally hot-footed it from the O2 to here, and I'm bearing in mind, because of all the tube strikes, I've driven. So,
wow.
So it will be only one glass of champagne for me, and that is it for the rest of the night.
Well, listen, get back, do your job, and bring me some more gossip. Josh Rom there, who is entertainment journalist and contributor at The Sun. We're going to take a quick break, but I'll be back with Vincent and more front pages in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here, and with me is Vincent Moss, and we're going through the front pages of the newspapers for Thursday the 11th of September, 9/11, of course, so it's an anniversary. Again, the front pages just don't know where to turn, do they? We're looking at the Independent now. So right at the top, King has private tea with Harry in first meeting for 19 months. And then this huge story, Poland shoots down Putin's drones and warns we're the closest to war since 1939. In fact, they've invoked Article 4 of NATO, which is the precursor to Article 5, which is you attack one, you attack all, and, you know. That is huge, isn't it? And Poland is used to having drones floating into it, but 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, not this number, not 19, and looks deliberate.
Exactly. Any other day would be a massive story everywhere, but with Peter Mandelson's story around and the Prince Harry story around and this dreadful shooting in America. But this is a huge story, really. These drones have very occasionally, Putin's drones have got across to Poland, but there was a massive number involved in this latest surge, I think more than a dozen, and as Poland warned, close to the war, they've been to war since 1939, and they had to send planes up, NATO planes, to try and intercept them. But one of the problems, of course, is these armaments cost an awful lot of money, and some of these drones were just fake drones and made of polystyrene, but that soaks up an awful lot of Western resource, because a lot of these missiles
You've got to shoot them down anyway.
Cost millions of pounds potentially. So the West has really got to think about how it's going to act, and there's a real feeling that Putin is testing the West with this, seeing how it reacts, seeing how quickly it reacts,
and seeing how connected we are as well. Testing those friendship boundaries, testing to see if Trump will side with Europe, testing to see if Turkey, who, as we know, was at the axis of upheaval the other day when Putin was meeting with Kim and with Xi and others, that Turkey was present at that. So, and Turkey is the second biggest country in NATO in terms of armaments.
Yeah, and what
so
timing?
He's
testing us with the timing as well, because he knows that the eyes are on Gaza and are trying to find a resolution there at a particularly difficult time in the wake of the latest incidents that have been happening there, and testing us in terms of Europe has got all sorts of problems. Look at what's happening in France. So it's a time when all world leaders' eyes are on other things, and yet here is Putin potentially testing the sort of eastern borders of NATO and seeing what NATO and the West will do.
But we were predicting this.
Yes.
We thought perhaps it would be Lithuania or one of the other small...
Further north, yes.
Further north.
Yeah.
But Poland, that's extremely audacious.
Yes, and it means the West has now got to think about what it's going to do in terms of air cover and troop movements and the rest of it, and to make sure that it's a very long border between the sort of Poland right up to Finland and the rest of it, so a lot of land and air to patrol.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary story when I woke up this morning, very early because of the dogs. But there you go, it's another story. Calls, and the other half of the paper, as I said, it really is like, oh God, there's so much news. It calls for Mandelson to quit over best pal Epstein revelations. Like I said, more to come, but some of those photographs of him standing looking out, at the ocean saying, and I wait patiently for your return. It's just very odd.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, a friendship with what turned out to be a convicted child sex offender, effectively, is so problematic. Mandelson famously said years ago, didn't he, "I'm a fighter, not a quitter." Well, let's see. He'll be working all the angles on this, but yes, he has. Yeah. But there'll be no comeback from this one if he goes, and I suspect he knows that. So it's going to be a very sort of. I wouldn't be surprised to see some movement on that in the next 48 hours or so.
Yeah. The Times also has gone with the Mandelson story. Starmer refuses to sack Mandelson as US envoy. Starmer has full confidence in Peer. This is what he said at PMQs, despite his support for disgraced Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot of questions at PMQs about whether due diligence really had been done on Mandelson and how much that Keir Starmer was aware of this close friendship, the deals, the trying to get Tony Blair to meet with Epstein, some really poor judgment calls by Mandelson.
Yes, exactly, and I think Kemi Badenoch had her best Prime Minister's questions as Conservative leader, potentially raising this after it was seen by many in her own party that she failed to land enough blows over Angela Rayner when she was on the ropes over her failure to pay stamp duty. And she did put Keir Starmer on the spot over this, and he did insist that due process had been followed on this, which is the line that tends to come out at these points. But the Times is reporting that the leaked emails show that Mandelson told Epstein in 2008 he should fight for early release, and that was at the point he was awaiting sentence for a child sex offence. Now, what Mandelson's defence seems to be is that he believed the legal advisors of Epstein and that he was innocent. Well, I mean, the jails are full of people who say they're innocent. You would think that a sort of wily old political campaigner like Peter Mandelson would be a bit cannier than to believe people's views. But he says he was taken in by him and he was a very convincing character. But it's really hard to see how he will get out of this with just a welter of revelations involved.
I mean, yeah, once somebody's been convicted of that sort of offence, you would err on the side of caution, wouldn't you?
You would think so.
You would think so. The other story on the front of the Times is Britain, back to that Poland story, Britain may send fighter jets to help guard Poland. Ugh, gosh, that's really difficult because we all know that if you've got fighter jets up in the air, if Russia were to send fighter jets as well and Britain was to shoot down a Russian jet, that is a declaration of war. This is why we haven't put any planes up in to help Ukraine, because of the fear of being in a position where you've got no choice but to shoot down an airplane. This is an escalation, isn't it?
Very much so, and I think that's what everybody's worried about. I mean, the Times is reporting that RAF Typhoons could be sent to Poland to carry out air policing missions alongside the Dutch F-35 jets that are already there. They're saying the other option could be to sort of give them a £250 million Sky Sabre medium-range anti-aircraft missile systems, anti-aircraft missile systems. I mean, all of it's an escalation potentially. I think that potentially the upside is you might be a bit safer shooting down Russian stuff when it crosses in over the Polish border. But any mistake that is made, then you are potentially into a dangerous escalation.
That's the problem. It's the unintended consequences. Yes. Because when you're flying in one of those jets, they are blooming fast. And, you know, although there are clever mappings and things like that, you can stray into enemy air space very quickly and be discombobulated enough, you know. I mean, I was very fortunate. I flew in a tornado and it was terrifying. And the G-suit and all of that and the speeds were I mean, I don't know how they do it for a start, but how you know where you are, and I know there are warning signals and things like that, but there's potentially accidents on both sides.
There are. Well, there's no doubt Putin's provoking NATO and the West, and well,
we've got to come up with the right reaction. He's throwing out his just trying his chances, isn't he? The Guardian, Poland warns of war threat, so we know that. The Guardian have managed to, they must have been late to press because they've managed to put the Charlie Kirk story on their front page, which I don't believe any other paper did, so they must have been late to bed.
Yes, I mean, I suspect the others with their later editions will probably manage to feature it, but they're the only one that seem to have it on the front of their early editions, and that's a picture of him speaking at the rally before he
just moments before he was shot
dead, yeah, in a white T-shirt with a microphone in his hand, and you know, you just thoughts are with his wife and two very young children, you know, who presumably expected him home that night, and
3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Yeah,
I mean, however
shocking.
you think it's just disgusting. I believe he's got on his T-shirt there, from what I can read, the word freedom as well. So Charlie Kirk, the Trump ally, shot dead in Utah. So they went very late this front page, and there'll be more details. They're saying on page 2. It's interesting. We were talking about Jeremy Clarkson earlier on with Josh Rom, and Jeremy Clarkson has actually put out a reaction to the shooting of Charlie Kirk, and this actually speaks to exactly what I've been saying and you've been saying, and that Clarkson says, for the first time in my life, I'm genuinely frightened about being a newspaper columnist, because he is so opinionated, and that is divisive. Some people will agree with him, some people will disagree with him. That's what it means. You divide opinion, and that's the point of being a columnist. And now Jeremy Clarkson is saying, you know, what does this mean for me? And a lot of people will be thinking that.
I think anybody who speaks in a public-facing role, whether a politician or a journalist or a commentator or a columnist, is worried at the moment, and it is frightening times, and you can understand why he potentially feels like that. I mean, in the old days, people would just fire off a letter to the newspaper editor, and that would be the end of it.
Yes,
and now
and say they're really cross, and
yes.
now they can. I mean, fortunately, we do have strict gun laws in this country, but you know, if you're determined, there are ways, right? And that is scary if you're outspoken.
And people are very clever at finding addresses out because they can piece information together.
Oh my God.
If you look at the Angela Rayner case after she quit her job, graffiti appeared on her house in Brighton within about 24, 48 hours.
I know.
So people locally very clearly identified the property that she was in, or the home she's just purchased in Hove, which is at the centre of all this furore, and were able to spray graffiti on it. Now, if they can spray graffiti on it, it means they know where you live and they've got access to not access to the inside of the property, but they could be waiting outside. And I think that if I was Angela Rayner potentially, or any other politician, that's very alarming for them.
It is really alarming if you're you know, a broadcaster or a writer, and you have views, and you're usually employed and paid to have views, divisive views that not everybody's going to agree with, and that suddenly becomes a problem.
Yeah, it does.
And it does silence people. It does make you wonder, do I just agree with everything?
Yeah, I think that's the fear, isn't it? Safer slightly in the UK because there are far fewer guns in circulation, thankfully, but a huge problem in America that's probably set to only get worse.
Yeah, really, really awful. The I newspaper, I have to say, also went to bed late and has the Charlie Kirk story on the very, very top. They've obviously decided their front page was going to be Mandelson, but they managed to find a space for the Charlie Kirk story, and there's more on that information on page 9. And as you said, the later editions of other newspapers will be bringing that story forward, no doubt. But it is interesting to see the timings, because that timing of him actually being dead came in quite late.
Yes, it did.
It really did. OK, let's take a quick break and we'll come back in just a moment. Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie. Just a little bit more detail from the FBI that they do believe they have the suspect in custody now. He was shot from a rooftop on campus, 200 yards, quite a distance, but they don't believe there is anybody else that they need to be searching for. So a sigh of relief for those people on that university campus and in that area. I'll bring you more on that at the top of the hour. For now, though, Vincent Moss is with me, former political editor, and we're looking at the papers. The Daily Mail, again, the two stories that they've gone with is the day of royal drama, and now Mandelson must be fired. I mean, Starmer must be, you know, and he must be wondering who, the people he's put around him, and they're all dropping like flies.
Exactly, and it's very hard. The Mail going very strong on the story, splitting their front page with this royal story at the top that we talked about earlier about the Charles and Harry union. But the big story is saying Mandelson must be fired, and it highlights again how the Labour peer sent Epstein topless photos of himself and sent him messages assuring him your friends stay with you and love you, and referring to Epstein as his best pal just before he was convicted for preying on children, and urging him to fight for early release. So so a lot of the words are a bit hard to square with sort of Peter Mandelson's suggestion that he was hoodwinked into believing he was innocent, because the point was he seemed to believe that he was innocent for quite a long time after he was convicted. And it's one thing if you think somebody's innocent until they're convicted, fine, you probably say I got it wrong, I thought they were innocent but they're guilty. But it's the fact that he stayed friends with him for so many years afterwards. Mandelson's admitted that. And
stayed in his house in New York as well while he was in jail, I think. Yeah, there's all sorts of instances where you think that is just bad judgment.
It is, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he tries to, as I'm sure he would wish to, stays on in his current role. He could just say, look, I brought you this incredible trade deal because we are paying far less in tariffs than many other countries. That's what I was put in to do. I cemented the relationship with Trump. Now I'm going to step aside, and I suspect we may see something along those lines, because it's very hard to see the story going away, not least because there's so much happening in America with the victims of Epstein wanting justice, demanding Congress hearings.
And Virginia Giuffre's book comes out next week.
Yes, and Gloria Aldred, the famous lawyer, is pushing for him to go and give evidence, Mandelson to go and give evidence before Congress, and saying that, he's got to think about the victims.
She's the lawyer for the victims, isn't she? Yeah, but she's a firebrand as well.
She is, not somebody to have chasing your tail, and he's in a very, very hot water, and it's going to be a really challenging couple of days.
Really interesting. But also, this line here, which I read earlier, I've just seen it again, it just made me go, ooh. So after the Epstein was convicted, Mandelson sent him a note saying everything can be turned into an opportunity.
And that's a problematic line, because that almost makes it sound as though he realises he was guilty, but he can turn it around.
It's all very strange, isn't it? Right, the Mirror. Hello, Papa. It's the Mirror's gone big on the tea that Harry had with his father, the King. So there'll be much more. I suppose we'll never know what they talked about, but there'll be a lot of speculation about what they talked about. The Metro, reckless Putin testing the West, deliberate drone strike on Poland, and a house that was hit by a drone. They're very lucky that nobody died. So that's a big story. Russia's been remarkably quiet, actually, after saying, well, it wasn't us.
I think he tried to say it was a mistake, didn't it? That they hadn't meant to do it, but I don't think anybody believes them.
No. Let's have a look at the Telegraph now. Fight on, Mandelson told jailed Epstein. Like we said, and there's going to be more and more stuff coming out. I mean, some of the stuff from that birthday book is already some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, ever. Like those cartoons. Did you see those hand-drawn cartoons of Epstein handing balloons and lollipops to little girls?
Yes.
And then being massaged, and something else by a girl kneeling down in a particular position. Somebody drew that. We don't know who the artist if I can put that, was who drew that, but lots of people knew what was going on, and this is what I cannot believe that more information hasn't come forward. I really can't, unless they're all so terrified that they're going to be found out as well. They're just keeping quiet.
That could be it, because I mean, there's also the Trump.
Got to be a
Trump denies he sent a message, doesn't he? But Trump's message refers to little secrets, doesn't he? And it's all this sort of nudge. We all sort of knew what was going on, but nobody. We're in a secret little club. Exactly. All really pretty sordid in retrospect. So very difficult for those people. At the end of the day, the only person in jail at the moment for it is of course, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Barely. She's gone to some cushy country
That's right, yes. And is saying nice things about President Trump. I wonder if the two things are linked.
Of course not. How cynical are you, Vincent Moss? Outrageous. The other story on the front here, of course, is Harry. The picture of Prince Harry there being reunited with the King after 19 months. And the UK may send jets to Poland. We've already had a look at that one, but it is... Yeah, it's a very strange day. It all sort of landed in one day.
And there'll be a lot of pressure on Harry and Meghan not to reveal anything that came out of that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting few days in the papers, because there'll be a huge pressure to reveal what was said. Yet both sides will know there'll be huge pressure on them not to reveal what was said.
Absolutely. I mean, if he does reveal even a hello, Papa, was said, then I think that'll be broken again, won't it? Because they don't trust him.
No, they don't.
They just don't trust him. Let's have a look at the Daily Star, news with a wink. So when Harry met Charlie, again, that story is the main story that they've gone with, but Wills is in Cardiff. And images there from the NTAs, Anton decked by Lineker. I can't believe he won presenter of... How many people watch football?
As a man, I would say probably quite a lot, potentially, but I think it's good in a way that after winning it for so many years, Anton, how many years they won it? 23 years in a row or something? So it's nice that somebody different wins it, although whether it should have been Gary Lineker or not, who knows. As a football watcher, if not a huge fan, I'm probably watch a bit more Match of the Day than I did Anton Deck, but that's just me. So, but it's on the Harry. They've got a picture of Harry in the back of his grainy picture of him in the back of the Range Rover he arrived for his meeting at Clarence House with King Charles in. It's a shame there's no better picture. I mean, obviously the papers would have loved a picture of the two of them together in an ideal world, or at least a picture of Harry perhaps walking in, but they didn't get that. It was just a kind of speeding Range Rover.
Speeding Range Rover with no number plates on it. And because I saw those images, and yes, he was driven in and then would have, but they just, it was all very, I think people were expecting it, but they didn't know when it would happen. And then when the King arrived back down from Scotland, they thought, oh, we'll keep an eye on Clarence House, and of course that's where it all happened. By
the way, all the papers talk about a 55-minute meeting. That's because he was in there for 55 minutes. We don't know that King Charles didn't keep him waiting in the corridor for half an hour.
And saw him for 5 minutes,
exactly.
and just said, look, we're not going to be not going to be having a long conversation after all. So yeah, the Star reflecting there, the NTAs at the top as well, with lots of celebrities looking very pleased with themselves. The Daily Express. French have blood on their hands over a Channel boat tragedies, and of course that's another story, isn't it, that those deaths that happened
of those young children on the boats.
On the boats. And you know, they were saying it was late at night, so it was dark, or it was, you know, it's now getting darker, isn't it, earlier and earlier, and people speaking different languages, lots of chaos, but it does seem like, you know, it's not women and children first when it comes to these boats, does it?
No, and they're blaming the French, or somebody's blaming the French for not stopping the boats, which of course is what they're criticised for all the time. But in this case they're being criticised because potentially those very young children on the boat wouldn't have lost their lives if the boat had been stopped from leaving French shores.
Yeah, but they was in French waters, I believe, as well, wasn't it? So that's that story. And then again, the Express has gone big on when Harry finally met his father again. It's always that when Harry met Sally, isn't it? They can't resist it. They can't resist it. Why isn't the King called Sally? That would be amazing. And I think the last news newspaper we've got. It's amazing how actually most of the papers are really aligned, aren't they, for Thursday. But the Financial Times, a fresh blow to Labour growth drive as Merck pulls plug on a $1 billion research site. This is this is not good. The US group hits out at ministers. UK is not competitive enough. Drug price row plays a role.
No good news for the Chancellor ahead of her budget, looking for that signs of growth.
She looked terrible at the PMQs today, didn't she?
Yeah, did not look happy, but
No.
none of the news is going in her favour. And even I know it's only a London-wide issue, but even the tube strike is another thing that's damaging the economy and hitting the chances of that growth.
I mean, that tube strike has just been an absolute nightmare, hasn't it? It feels like it's been worse than
Yeah, it has.
Past ones.
I mean, there's an awful lot of closed stations. I know for viewers and listeners that aren't in London, they might wonder where we're going on about it, but at the end of the day, it is the economic powerhouse of the country. There's about 10, 11 million people here, and a lot of them weren't able to go about their business and make money and contribute to the economy because the tube strike absolutely crippled pretty much the whole of the city.
And on one of the front pages, actually, there was a nib. I can't remember which one. I think it was the Telegraph saying that £72,000 isn't enough money. They're saying to buy a house in London.
They're right about that potentially.
They are.
But £72,000 as a tube driver is a lot compared to the average London wage, which is £42,000.
Yeah, indeed. Vincent Moss, thank you very much
Pleasure.
indeed. It's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you. Coming up, it's just you and me. I've got loads of calls on the board. You're wanting to talk about Charlie Kirk, so I will take your calls on that and loads of messages as well. Yvette Cooper has reacted and said, deeply shocked by the killing of Charlie Kirk in Utah. Political violence has no place in our societies. Our thoughts and condolences are with his family. And Nigel Farage has said, this is a very dark day for American democracy. I'm desperately sad for Charlie, his wife and his children. Of course, Nigel Farage does spend quite a lot of time in the United States. The chances are he knows Charlie Kirk personally. So we've got more information on that. I'll bring you up to date on any news that we get on that story. Of course, it's quite 6 hours behind in America at the moment and on the East Coast. So we'll have more in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and good morning to you. It is September the 11th, 9/11, so we got that anniversary. But the lead story this hour is that Conservative activist Charlie Kirk has been shot and killed at a university event in Utah. The gunshot was fired from around 200 yards away, struck him in the neck as he responded to a question about mass shootings. The 31-year-old was known for holding outdoor debates on campuses across the US. Kirk, who founded the conservative group A Turning Point USA, aged just 18, was close to President Trump and his family. The US president confirmed Kirk's death on social media earlier this evening, ordering US flags to be flown at half-mast until 6 p.m. on Sunday. Well, so far, we know that the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, said that a suspect in the fatal shooting at Utah Valley University has been taken into custody, but local law enforcement have contradicted that statement. I'm guessing it's an ever-evolving, fast-moving story and problem for authorities in the US. So although the FBI says that they do have a suspect, the local law enforcement have contradicted that statement. A person was in custody, officials said, but was released as they did not match the suspect, and we're waiting confirmation and clarification on this, and I'll bring that to you as soon as we get it. The police chief at Utah Valley University, Jeff Long, was asked about security on campus during a press conference this evening. He said the event was attended by 3,000 people and that 6 officers were working there. Long says officers trained to prevent these kinds of incidents, but unfortunately they happen. Like has been reported, it was from around 200 yards away that the shooting is believed to have happened. So that's the latest. We will bring you clarification as soon as we ourselves get it. I'm looking at all the screens, and you can see the moment that Charlie Kirk was shot, and those 3,000 people who were surrounding him watching the event, running and scattering, as I'm sure Americans, when they hear gunfire, that is exactly the right thing to do. They just get out of the way. Many people, of course, terrified by the sound of gunshot, particularly in an education environment like a college or a university. There are more reactions from around the political spectrum. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has said, "My thoughts this evening are with the loved ones of Charlie Kirk. It's heartbreaking that a young family has been robbed of a father and a husband. We must all be free to debate openly and freely without fear, and there can be no justification for political violence." So that's from the Prime Minister. John Swinney has said the murder of Charlie Kirk is another dreadful example of violence in our politics. We live and thrive by the democratic strength of respecting the views of others. There can never be a place for violence. My sympathy to his wife and family. And Marco Rubio, heartbroken and outraged by the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He was an incredible husband and father and a great American. May he rest in eternal peace with our Lord. And I'll bring you more reactions in just a moment. But Frank has called in from London on this. Frank, another, just shameful death.
Yes, it's a shameful death, but let's not forget one thing. Just a couple of weeks ago, a young man entered a place of, went into a church and shot dead and injured tens of people and killed about 2 to 3 young children. They came out, made a bit of noise, and after a day or two, it died down, and that was that. Unfortunately, time and time again. But you see, one thing we've also got to understand is the tone in America, all over the world, but especially in America, the toxic tone sets from the top, permeates, and it trickles all the way down to the masses. So the Trumps and the Rubios of this world, they need to look at themselves in the mirror and really understand that unless they are prepared to put aside this whole sort of very, very hardcore, strict views on either implementing some sort of gun reform or doing something and not think of their pockets, maybe something good would come out of this, I mean.
Yeah. Listen, I agree with you, and I do think that the language that's used from the very top of American politics at the moment is it's really distasteful and hateful. Referring to Democrats as being mentally unwell, or they're all communists, or they're
exactly.
and that these words do come out of Donald Trump's mouth, and it's very difficult, therefore, if the country then sees this kind of rhetoric and obvious distaste and hatred and loathing of people with different opinions. It's very difficult then for people not to take an example from that. And I'm sure there are people on the Democratic side who are also doing the same thing, but they've ratcheted up this narrative, haven't they, of division, of this divisive, you're wrong, I'm right. There's nothing in between, and all of this stuff. And it must be very difficult for people, particularly if they're not, well, I don't want to say mentally unwell, but particularly if they're easily persuaded that's the right way to behave, and it never is the right way to behave.
Not at all. And I mean, with Charlie Kirk, it's very sad what happened, but the thing is, I've listened to some of his, what I would call his speeches, and they can be very, very extreme. And many a times I've thought to myself, my God, you cannot go around talking like that, because you are going to trigger someone. And people have to remember one thing. Before this whole meeting with 2,000 to 3,000 people, there was a petition of 6,000 people against. And you think to yourself, sometimes these people have to take into account their own personal safety. If you have 6,000 people, petitioning against any form of, a meeting, maybe you need to sometimes think to yourself, what am I saying or doing that might trigger someone?
No, you see, that's where I divide from you, Frank, because I do believe that it doesn't matter what he was saying. He has the right to say it. And look, I've watched hours of Charlie Kirk. I'm a big fan of TikTok, so I'm obsessed with it. So I watch loads and loads, and I see both sides of the argument. Right, I see people who are influencers from the centre or from the left debating with Kirk and all of these things. So I watch both sides of it, and I don't always agree with Charlie Kirk, but what I do agree with is his right to safely say them.
I understand. But the problem we have now is we have a president who has clamped down on anyone on the other side who says anything. You see, the dangerous thing, what's really happening now is, yes, I totally agree with you. I'm in favor of Charlie Kirk and his ilk being able to say and express their views. But Mr. Trump and the Republican Party have muzzled people on the left who come out and demonstrate against, the war in Gaza, or who says anything against him. Look, we have people, for God's sake, who are being arrested at the airport for having any tweet on their phone that criticizes the U.S. government. So they can't have it both ways.
Now, I would also agree with that, and it's extraordinary to me that they shout about free speech and they go on about it all the time, but as so many people do when they talk about free speech, they only agree with it if it's free speech in their favour. And I've always believed in free speech. Even if I vehemently disagree with you, I will always let you speak, and I will always say, well, I don't agree with that, or I do agree with this, but that is the whole that is where we should be, as a species. But unfortunately, We're not there. And people like Jeremy Clarkson saying, I'm scared to be a columnist now. Look, he's employed to be divisive. He's employed because some people will love him and some people will hate him, right? That's the whole point of Jeremy Clarkson. It's the same with, you know, some speech radio presenters. They're employed because they annoy people. O'Brien on another radio station. People either love him or they hate him. But that's his shtick. That's why he's employed. You know, and if everybody's got to be grey and down the middle, and we're going to be poorer for it. It's like comedy can no longer be comedy anymore because in case it offends somebody, well then that isn't comedy. Then you just become nothing.
Yeah.
We become nothing. We lose so much from not being able to debate.
Oh, yes. And I mean, the thing is, America has now got to look at itself. But I'm afraid this, I mean, give it a couple of days, Petrie, and it will just blow over. And then we'll be back to square one again. Time and time again, we have this sort of, you know, senseless killings and shootings in America. And all these politicians will come out on the steps of the Capitol and make a lot of noise and ask for, you know, prayers and all whatnot. But nothing come of it because there's too much money
in the gun lobby.
You know, exactly.
But Frank, do you remember? I mean, it was a couple of, maybe it was about a couple of months ago, maybe less than that, where the Democrats were shot in their home. They shot the dog, the wife, the husband. Nobody talks about that anymore. You know, that was a political killing, and it was a guy who pretended to be a police officer, didn't he? Dressed up as a police officer and wore a mask. And he went and tried to kill another family as well who were Democrats. And that has blown over. I mean, Charlie Kirk is probably, you know, a bit of a celebrity there, and maybe they'll talk about it. But you're right, it will just disappear again. There'll be another tragedy somewhere at the hands of somebody with a gun.
It's a sad state of affairs.
It's awful.
I mean, time and time again, we wake up every morning and we hear sort of some tragedy in a school. I mean, what kind of nation do they want to create whereby kids are afraid to go to school?
It's the number one reason that children die in America is a school shooting.
Exactly. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they need someone who would come out there and say, look, we are going to put aside our support. There's too much money in American politics when it comes to the guns and the gun lobby, and I cannot see an end to this madness.
No, I mean, when the Second Amendment was drafted, when it was written,
that's hundreds of years ago.
It was hundreds. When you know, it took 10 minutes to load a pebble into a gun, right, and shoot it, and then you'd have to reload it, and that it didn't envisage, I don't think, the rifles like the one that must have been used on Charlie Kirk, shooting a sniper rifle with you know, those vision things from 200 yards away. Why does anybody need that? You know, that's always the question when it's the automatic rifles that you see, semi-automatic or automatic rifles. You think, well, that's not what the Second Amendment kind of envisaged.
Absolutely. I mean, these weapons were designed for war.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, why the hell is it possible for anyone to purchase? I mean, a war machine.
Yeah. Honestly,
it's utter madness.
Yeah. It really is, and I don't understand. I don't understand why that seems to be the world they want to live in. I mean, if you look anywhere else around the world, there isn't the same level of gun violence. There isn't the same level of mass shootings anywhere else in the world, unless there is a war going on. And America seems to be blind to the fact that's because they've got these guns, or they just, I don't know. It seems like an easy correlation to me, right? We had a terrible shooting in this country, and we banned guns.
We banned it, but because there is, I mean, a collective effort, and there's a need to sort of, I mean, control this sort of madness in other parts of the world. I mean, you go to Switzerland. I mean,
everybody's got a gun
in Switzerland. But I mean, it's just. But also, it's the malaise in the society. I mean, I've spent time in the States, and honestly, I mean, I haven't been to the States in the last 10 years because the last time I was in America, I just felt there was something very, very off, you know, in the society and the way people spoke about each other and the lack of accountability and consideration. And I just felt it's not a society I would like to be in. And I'm not surprised it's gotten to this stage. I really do hope they will take note and do something about it. But I'm sorry to say nothing will come of it. This will blow over in a couple of hours. You watch.
Yeah, I'm with you, Frank. I'm with you, Frank. I really am. And I think it is so sad because this is such a pointless death, particularly if it was over, you know, just something he said. I mean, well, nobody deserves to be killed for their point of view. Nobody deserves that. It doesn't matter who they are. They're just speaking. They're not doing anything. He wasn't inciting violence or hatred. I mean, some of his views I didn't agree with, but he has absolutely every right to say them wherever and whenever he would have chosen to have done that, and to be killed for it is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I'm going to take a quick break, but I will come back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and we are still talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination, the Conservative activist Charlie Kirk being shot and killed at a university event in Utah. He was 31 years old. He had two small children. I believe one was 1 year old and one was 3, and a wife. So, you know, whatever you thought of him, he was a human being with a family, and nobody deserves to be shot and killed for their views. A couple more reactions here. Stephen Miller, who's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor, said, "Our hearts are shattered America has lost one of its greatest champions. A loving family has lost the most extraordinary husband and father. All of us must now dedicate ourselves to defeating the evil that stole Charlie from this world. And Ed Davey here in the UK said, absolutely horrifying news of Charlie Kirk's murder. Political violence should have no place in society. My prayers are with his family. I can't imagine the pain they must be going through. And that's the point, isn't it? This man was just out talking. That's all he was doing. It's just horrific. Janine is in Bournemouth. Hi, Janine.
Good evening. Good evening.
Tell me about Charlie Kirk.
So just for some narrative, all the time I would finish work, arrive home, and whilst preparing our evening meal, I followed Charlie intently.
On TikTok?
No, actually on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
I would just be preparing food, and I would listen to him every single day. And I wanted to talk about, well, this evening I just cried. I said to my husband, they've shot Charlie. Charlie Kirk's been shot. I've never met this man. I liked the sound of his voice. I liked how he debated young people. He gave them a platform to come up to him and to say, I do not agree with you. This is a Western gift. In the West, we are allowed, well, for someone like myself, it now feels that the voice has been taken away. And I want to talk about, for many, many people, what Charlie represented. I heard him say at a speech once that he has been honoured to speak for the people all over America who, when they discuss immigration, freedom for women to have our own spaces, they're shut down vigorously, aggressively. He's seen a Jewish friend of his, a woman, who online was saying, I do not want men coming in dresses into my changing room. This woman received rape threats, as I heard this evening you have, death threats. She was called a Nazi. She then tweeted, but I'm Jewish, and I have family on either mother or father's side who were murdered during the Holocaust, and the vitriol just...
But why have we come to that point, Janine? That is the question for me. Go on.
Because there are people all over this country, and nobody can ignore raising the colours. I have a Union flag flying on my drive. We are now in a state where, I'm going to give you an example actually, this probably to me summarises where people like myself are feeling that we have entered into this surreal, revolting world. I went into a pet store to purchase some food for our dog, and I was chatting away to a wonderful woman that serves me all the time. And she made a comment, and she said, have you seen the post on our local Facebook page for where we live? I said, oh, that's a minefield. And I said, people's opinions, that's fine, but it's so dark at the moment. And the lady standing with her little dog, who we weren't discussing anything with, entered into the conversation without any invitation. And I turned and I looked at her, and she was wearing a beaded Palestinian bracelet, and she had a lanyard around her neck for the LGBTQ, and I thought, I'm just leaving that conversation. But for some reason, she wants to become involved. And she said, I post all the time. I had all these followers, blah, blah, blah. And she said, we've got to stop. And she just launched into this assassination of Israel, of Jews, of everything. And I said, excuse me. The Israelis pulled out, and I just gave her a couple of facts. And this woman was behaving as if she was about to spontaneously combust. And I just said to the lady serving me, I'm leaving now. And I think that's how I would summarize it. Because if you don't agree with the other side's narrative, you're called a Nazi for saying simple things, stating simple facts, okay, that the rest of the country is actually feeling. And this is what Charlie represented. He said, I am providing a voice because people in their homes are afraid to speak. They lose their employment. They lose friends. Family members do not speak to them. This is what Charlie represented. He gave people a voice, and he asked, when you watched his, when he went to all these university campuses, he always said, this is the thing that he said continuously. He said, if you disagree, please come to the front. I want to debate with those students who disagree first. This is the point of me. And they've murdered him because actually he was giving everybody a voice. The other side just scream racist, and you cannot have a voice, and you need to be imprisoned. And that's the problem. Charlie Kirk was a brave man. He was a decent man.
Did you agree with everything that he said?
No, I did not.
No, me
and
either.
Actually, his... I'll give you an example of when I really, really disagreed with him. I am absolutely against any kind of late-term abortion as a contraception. I would like that right removed. You don't get to do that. However, I will pass on a sword for any woman who has been raped. Mm-hmm. This is my opinion, that cannot have a termination. She should not be forced to carry a child that is the result of rape. Now, there are staunch pro-lifers all over the world who would say that I am disgusting for saying that it's not the fault of the child. So I did disagree with certain sentiments because Charlie said that and he was so sympathetic, but his statement was that the woman who had been raped should be given love and care and then should be encouraged to have the baby, take the baby to term, deliver the baby, and then the baby can be adopted. I disagreed with that for so many reasons. Number one, when a woman is raped,
it's traumatic enough, right?
It is traumatic enough. And also, in our modern Western society, she can go to her doctors and receive the morning after pill. Charlie believed that from conception, that was a life. And for that, I disagree, because you're not... This is where we disagree. But they have assassinated and murdered a wonderful man that I never met, that I sort of counted as a friend.
But that's the power as well. I mean, that is the power of social media and of influencers and of that relationship that you build with somebody.
Can I just disagree? Sorry. When you say, see, the word influencer, I cannot stand the word influencer.
All right.
Because I genuinely believe, and I followed him rigorously, okay, he had opinions, and, you know, I am a Donald Trump supporter 100%, and I followed all of his political campaigns. But Charlie went to campuses and he asked for other people to come forward with their views. So I wouldn't, in my own opinion, I would not class him as an influencer. He gave people a platform, even if he disagreed with them. And that is something that we have to hold on to in the West, that you are able to give, you are able to speak without being imprisoned. If you are going to call for the murder of somebody and say at 6 o'clock, let's be here because this person lives here and we're going to kill them, you need to be in prison. Mm-hmm. You need to be locked up. But the moment we lose our right to speech, we become these countries. It's a slippery slope.
I agree, but you know, that rule, that incitement to violence or hatred has been around for years. That's never changed. It's just people's opinions or views of what is incitement to violence or hatred that have changed.
No, I agree with you there.
Yeah, and people should be held to account if they are calling for hatred or violence. But everything else is absolutely out there, but so many people only agree with free speech in as far as they agree with it. Yes. If you say anything, and I get a lot of this on this channel because I'm quite different to the other presenters on this channel in my views, and that's why I'm here. And because of that, people, you know, it's just kind of like, but that's the point. There's supposed to be different opinions. There's supposed to be different views, because without that, you're just in an echo chamber. So it's good. I hear both sides. I will always listen to both sides. I will listen to you. I will listen to whoever. If somebody phones me and says they hated Charlie Kirk, I will give them the same grace and the same respect as I've just given to you. It's because that is what being an adult is about, isn't it?
But it is also a Western freedom that we are allowed to say, I do not like you, and this is why. Yeah. And we have slowly seen that erosion. If we focus on the United Kingdom, in our time, this is disappearing. You look at the big markets.
But I think that's the fault of the West. I think that it is not the fault of any other culture or any other part of the world. It's our fault because people are, you know, somehow now offence is something that is akin to a punch in the face. It isn't. I can be offended by a joke and still find it funny. I think offence is important. I think it's important part of being free.
Yes, but it is in that context. It is not where you can. The British police can arrest somebody. Look at Graham
Linehan. Yeah,
Linehan. Sorry.
He did suggest punching somebody in the balls, but you know, but that's got to be common sense. That's not exactly the same as threatening, like you said, to set a hotel on fire or whatever.
He's had threats to his life because he stands up and
very much so. Yeah.
You cannot, there's no such thing as trans, and you cannot remove the healthy breasts from a 13-year-old girl because she says that she wants to be a boy. And for that, the man has had death threats. He's had rape threats. So there is also a fine line, I believe, between the right side and the wrong side. And as I say, the expression to die on your sword, you will never, ever, ever convince me that a young person who is a teenager, any adult, but I am a mother, so let's just focus on that for a moment. You will never, ever, ever, ever convince me that removing the body parts of children or giving them puberty blockers is to be kind and that it makes me transphobic. I will only ever have the narrative that is child abuse. Now,
but you wouldn't though violently suppress somebody who disagreed with you.
No, absolutely not. However, here's the problem. As we've seen with the closure of the Tavistock Centre, how far do you take this? Because I believe that everybody working that actually place these deluded parents, ill-informed parents, and took their children on that path, they should be prosecuted. So there is a fine line between freedom of speech and freedom to act, because everybody that said you cannot remove the healthy breasts of a 13-year-old. When Donald Trump was first elected, he created an organisation which consisted of lawyers. I watched the speech. He said he was going to create this department where if you are one of these children, you can come forward, you will be given doctor's advice, you will be given legal aid, and we will prosecute and charge everyone we can find. Because slicing the breast, and as a woman, this is relevant to me, off of a healthy 13-and-a-half-year, she was 13-and-a-half in the worst case. She had one appointment with her GP, her parents took her, one or whatever, and then she had 2 appointments with a psychiatrist, and because you pay for private healthcare there, her breasts were removed. at 13 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that would happen here at 13 and a half, but it's still, nonetheless, it is. But listen, I feel the same way about FGM, you know, female genital mutilation. I think everybody involved in that, and it still goes on in Harley Street. In fact, with a European centre for it, which was something to be proud of.
But then why don't they? And this, now you've just raised another good point. They are so selective. They are so selective of who they decide needs to be championed. I follow lots of accounts of the women in Iran are so brave.
I agree.
Tell you the bravery and the moment, and look at Afghanistan. I'd rather not, actually, because I just...
The way they're treating women there, oh my God, Janine, you and I are so close on that. I honestly, because and then you've got Nigel Farage saying he'd send women and girls back there. I literally, I don't have the words. Janine, I've got to go. I've loved talking to you. Please do call again. But I'm very, very late to a break and I'll get into trouble. So I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. It's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. I have a statement here from Turning Point USA. This was the organisation, the conservative group, Turning Point USA. He set that up, Charlie Kirk, when he was just 18 years old. So the organisation he set up, it's released this statement saying, "It is with a heavy heart that we confirm that Charles James Kirk has been murdered by a gunshot that took place during Turning Point USA's The American Comeback Tour campus event at Utah Valley University on September the 10th, 2025. May he be received into the merciful arms of our loving Saviour who suffered and died for Charlie. We ask that everyone keep his family and loved ones in your prayers. We ask that you please respect their privacy and dignity at this time." So that was the statement from the organisation that Charlie Kirk set up as an 18-year-old. A couple of your messages messages now. This is from Maxine saying, no one deserves to die for a point of view or an opinion. It is truly terrifying. I think these killings happen to make people scared to speak out, and it won't be long before everyone is too frightened to express any opinion at all. That's the fear, isn't it? That's the real worry. Maybe that's just what they want from this, but it's just truly awful. Well said, Maxine. I completely agree with you. Kaz said, I'd never heard of Charlie Kirk before. I had a quick look-see on YouTube. He looks like an excellent debater. Simon says, isn't the point of getting extreme views and then pragmatic views out into the open is to allow the vast majority to get an informed decision? I completely agree with that. We need 2 points of view. We need a counter view. It is vital. You know, I don't always agree with my colleagues on this station. They don't always agree with me, but there has to be a space for both. And it's extraordinary how many people go, get Petrie, she's not taught, get her off the station. I believe in free speech. It's just such a literally. Think about it. It is so, if we don't have both points of view, you can't make an informed decision. You just can't. And things change with information. So a decision that you made yesterday may not be the same decision that you make today. I do that all the time. My opinions adjust with information. They change with evidence. I might think one thing one day and then go, oh, I was wrong. Oh, crikey. I've just seen some evidence that disproves my opinion yesterday. And I think that's important. That's where we should be. Nobody should be so entrenched in their view that they cannot hear the opposing view. I spend a lot of my free time looking at views, reading views that I absolutely and objectively disagree with, but I will read them, and sometimes they change my mind, sometimes, and that's why I do it, and that's why I watch people I don't agree with. I didn't agree with a lot of what Charlie Kirk had to say, but I watched him, and I allowed him, I listened to him, I went, okay, I agree with that a bit, I don't agree with that, and that is the point. If you become so entrenched that you can't hear the opposing point of view, you are not informed enough to have an opinion. That is my view, very strongly. We all need to be in a position where we can change our point of view with new evidence, new information, anything that makes us stop and think, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe. I'll have another look. That's where we should be. But to kill somebody for their opinion, to threaten to rape somebody for their opinion, to threaten to bomb their house, yeah, I've had that as well, for an opinion, I know what that makes you. I just can't say it on the radio. I'm taking a quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is a Talk, and we're talking about Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated today, a 31-year-old married man with two very young children. There doesn't appear to be any further information as to whether they've got the suspect or not. There were reports from the FBI that they had managed to find the suspect and they didn't believe anybody else was at large or connected with this murder, but the local law enforcement absolutely contradicted that statement. So we're still waiting for any clarification on that. I'm not seeing any on the screens around me. Let me just read a few more of your messages. Listening to viewers' text, perhaps it's the word divisive that people don't like, even though it means the same as didn't agree with. Yeah, it means to divide opinion, just being divisive. Who else will have their lives terminated early because we have opposing thoughts and opinions, in one ear, Petrie, and out of the other? And that's from Alison. Thank you, darling. That's very sweet of you. Matt in Derby. This is a really good point. While public figures are allowed to make asinine comparisons of their enemies to evil people, regimes, mad, bad people will use their words as justification for vile actions. And that is sadly true. If you've got people who have got the public ear making horrendous comments about people they deem to be their political enemies or enemies of religion or whatever it is, and saying that they're crazy or they're this or they're sick, you know, and those comments are all over the political discourse in the United States. I think pretty much from both sides. But you know, when that language is out there, then it sort of filters down, doesn't it? And people go, well, you know, they are mad, they are sick, they are this, they are that. And that's where it can easily turn to violence. And Matt goes on to say, today it was John McDonnell, who will it be tomorrow or next week? Heather says, when they kill debate, they kill freedom of speech. And that's what Charlie Kirk's killer did today. This is a wake-up call to all. What happened to Charlie is a huge tragedy to common sense and logic that Charlie had. And God bless you, Charlie. This is terrorism on freedom of speech. I mean, that is the point. Whoever on which side of any political divide gets killed for what they think or for what they say or for what they believe, it is an attempt to shut down freedom of speech. And often these people who do this are people who say, I believe in freedom of speech. It's like, well, if you did, you'd shut up and listen, perhaps. Because freedom of speech is also about the freedom to listen. But listening doesn't seem to be a skill that's around much anymore. David from... David from Watford. Free speech is so key in a normal world where you can have the right to your own opinion, and what happened to Charlie tonight must send shockwaves through the world. We must stand together, and there are people who want to divide us and make us weak, but we shall not fall. David, I agree with that as well. I think that so many people are trying to silence freedom of speech. It is just not, it's just, this is, I don't know. And I'm sorry, but they keep doing this. You've already got people like Clarkson, Jeremy Clarkson, saying, I'm now scared to be a columnist, to write an opinion piece, to write my opinions. Chris says, Petrie, Charlie's views, Trump's comments, free speech attack, all come secondary to a 3-year-old little girl and a 1-year-old little boy who just saw their dad get shot. It's horrendous. Chris, absolutely, straight back to the point there. Gary says, regarding the death of Charlie Kirk, I agree that regardless of his opinion, his murder is disgusting. However, people should realise that you yourself, Petrie, are also allowed that right to free speech. Some people only agree with free speech if they are in agreement. If it doesn't work, but it doesn't work that way. Great show. Thank you very much indeed, Gary. It is very true. Yeah, I think I've read that one. Yeah, thank you. Right, Stephen is in London. Let's have a chat with Stephen. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Petrie.
What do you make of this, this attack on what appears to be an attack on freedom of speech?
Yeah, well, I've told you this before when we've spoken, that when I call talk, although you and I differ on quite a few opinions, you always listen to what I say, you respectful, and we have a back and forth, listen to each other's views, and sometimes you get the better of me, and maybe sometimes I get the better of you, but we have a discussion where we listen to and respect each other's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, I may not agree, and often I don't agree with many callers, but I still wouldn't. I wouldn't be disrespectful about that, because that's the whole point, and that is also the whole point of a phone-in show, right? It is not just don't just phone me to agree with me. That's boring.
Well, I call other on talk. I used to call certain other presenters, but they would just shout me down, and there'd be no conversation. So I stopped calling them.
Mm.
But, because they're not willing to have a discussion. It's either their way or the highway. So, but you and Peter Cardwell, who do, and it's essential to Western values. It's why the West has been so successful. And so when you start shooting people who you disagree with, you're not only causing personal upset, you're attacking the very values of the West.
Completely agree. Yeah, I absolutely completely agree with you. And it was like I said to Vincent Moss, who was in earlier, it reminds me of Jill Dando being shot in Fulham outside of her house, and we never got to the bottom of what it was, but it was always believed to be that she exercised her right to freedom of speech, to support certain charities, and to, working on Crime Watch, and that was just her job, and she was killed for it. I mean, this is a journalist who was just doing her job.
Yeah.
And this is an attempt to shut people down and to stop people talking.
Yeah, and it will, because it will put fear in people, so people will stop talking. And just as on a lesser degree, people are scared to speak in their jobs, for fear of losing their job.
Yeah, it's happening, isn't it? It's grassroots now at the moment. But you start getting people. I mean, we've had politicians stabbed to death, and that would be for their political view, right? I mean, it just a view or a point of view or an opinion is sacrosanct. It's sacred to us, and we may not always agree, but that the discourse is the whole point, not to be killed for it.
No, exactly. And just one point I'd like to make. You talk about we should listen to other people's views and not just listen to people that agree with us. Mm. Well, the problem is humans aren't rational, and we have genetic predispositions, and those genetic predispositions can make us predisposed to accept and believe certain points and certain facts, and to be predisposed to reject and not believe certain other facts.
Surely that's not genetic. Surely that's surely that's a mental, that's a brain issue, because we can all read a book and suddenly go, oh, I was wrong about that.
No. People are genetically predisposed to be either left wing or right wing, just as people are genetically predisposed. Well, I assume you believe that people are genetically predisposed to be gay or straight.
That's different.
It's not. It's a psychological trait as well. All our psychological traits are partly genetically predisposition. What's your favorite color? You don't choose your favorite color. You just say, I like that color. You don't think, oh.
But I don't. This is where we're going to disagree, isn't it? I don't believe that's a genetic predisposition. I believe that is from nurture. That'll be something because your mother once wore a blue shirt, and you loved it because she gave you a kiss and told her that she loved you, and then you're predisposed to like blue, or to value that as a colour because it has an association with a very loving moment in your life. That's where I think those things come from, which I think is very different to being gay or straight. But Stephen, we'll always chat, you and I, and I'll always give you the right to say what you believe, and then we disagree. I've got to go though, because I just want to shove in another call first. Last call, I think, probably on this hour. Sarah, good morning.
Good morning, Petrie.
Isn't this awful? I mean, it does feel like it's just another step closer to the freedom of speech stuff, doesn't it?
I've been waiting for something like this to happen ever since Trump got in again, to be honest, because the atmosphere in the States is an absolute powder keg. I've got cousins over there. And the way that the election last year with Trump's MAGA and literally them, us, dividing society, smashing it to smithereens, putting people into silos, plus the amplification through X and the rest of social media and the broligarchs in Silicon Valley and their social media platforms and whatever, that hasn't helped one bit. That has made an absolute and utter dissatisfied. To put it this way, people were dissatisfied. Well, people just grumbled. Now people are angry because of all of the stoking of the fires and the kerosene being poured on bonfires caused by everything that's gone on especially in the last, well, let's say the last year. That has not, which has definitely not helped matters. Also, the fact that, contrary to popular belief, your political assumptions and beliefs are not genetic. I know this because I had to do genetics at university, part of my degree. So that's pure junk science. Anyone who believes that, and also the fact that the way Trump has been doing this, egging people on the stuff that's been going on. You know, he's been trying to put the National Guard out. He put it in Washington, then he's trying to get it in New York and Chicago, Baltimore. This is all a powder keg, and the powder keg was ready to burst. And the way things are shaping, this guy really thinks that he just wants a civil war. The way he's behaving is it's almost as if he's taken the Handmaid's Tale, instead of taking it as a warning, he's taken it as a how-to guide, how to run America.
Well, that's Project 2025, isn't it? And listen, I do think that America, there is a febrile and divisive atmosphere there at the moment, and it is being stoked. But there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of fear. You've got the Arkansas farmers are terrified they're going to lose their land. They're terrified because there's nobody's buying their soybeans. All of that kind of thing. So there's a lot of fear, and a lot of violence comes from fear. So there's an awful lot, and I from everything that I see about America, and I spend hours a day looking at American news and reading American papers. It is a very divisive place at the moment.